Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel, Books by Brit TV. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I am going to be discussing some of my favorite reads from elementary school, kindergarten through 5th grade, and in no particular order. Just a couple of books that I remember reading as a child growing up. The first one is Ghost Cadet. It was a story about this young man. He went to go visit his family in Virginia for the summer, and he met a ghost, a little boy who served in the Civil War, who kept like reliving the Civil War, and he was trying to find his father's golden locket. And it was a really good book, really fun read, and I read that book in 4th grade. And I remember I remember the book off the top of my head when I was writing out my list, because we had the accelerated reader points where you read a book and then you're tested on what was inside of that book and you get points. And I remember picking up this book because it was worth 10 accelerated reader points. So a lot of the books I read from 3rd to 5th grade, I chose them based on the accelerated reader points, how many accelerated reader points I would get. Alrighty. The next book is Babysitters Club by Ann M. Martin. Now, I remember those books because I read like a lot of those books. It was a series, and the the books was about it was about this group of 4 girls who were babysitters, and they created a Babysitters Club, and it was Christy, Claudia, Stacy, and Mary Ann who created the club, and just basically stories about their adventures with babysitting and their home lives and personal lives. And I remember I started reading this book when I was in the 3rd grade. I started reading this series in the 3rd grade, and me and my mom and my brothers, we were living inside of a shelter, and they had all these Babysitters Club books. And I remember every night I would go and get like 3 or 4 or 5 of those books, and I would read them because they were like very short books. Like, as an adult, it only take me 2 hours to read these books, but as a kid it probably took me like 4 or 5 hours to read these books. But they were very short books, and they were really fun. I used to love to read those books. And they all and the story was set in this town called Stony Brook, Connecticut, I believe, because I believe everybody used to commute to work in Stamford, Connecticut. But yeah, they were all set in Stony Brook, Connecticut. And then in the series they also had like the portrait or autobiography series, where each of the 4 members of the Babysitter Club had to write an autobiography about themselves for an 8th grade project. It was a really good series. And then piggybacking off the Babysitters Club, I read Babysitter's Little Sister, which was about the member Christy from the Babysitters Club. Her mother married this millionaire named Watson Brewer, and he had 2 children, Karen, and I can't remember the little boy name, but they gave the little sister of Christy's stepsister, Karen, a spinoff. And I remember her little books was good because Karen used to be a little sassy little girl. She was so funny. I think her first book was called Karen's Witch, and she was convinced that the lady next door to her father's house was a witch. Really good series. Boxcar Kids. Now, honestly, I really cannot remember any of the Boxcar stories at all, but I remember reading them all. But for some reason, I'm drawing a blank on what they were all about. But I remember like they books was only like 2 points of accelerated reader points, so it probably was a quick read. But I remember reading that series. Also, Silver Blaze. I love that series. It was about these. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I'm gonna have everything linked down below. Silver Blaze was about these kids who are all like figure skaters, who all wanted to be, professional figure skaters. And, it was just a series about those kids. They were all in like middle school and high school, I believe. Really good series. Also, V.C. Andrews. And I'm going to expand about her in my middle school. Oh, no, I'm going to expand on V.C. Andrews in another book. I read a lot of V.C. Andrews also when I was staying in the shelter as a kid, because they had mostly Babysitters Club, Babysitter's Little Sister, and V.C. Andrews books. Like, that's basically all they had to read though, and they had like every last book in the series. But didn't stay there long enough to read every single last book that it had. But I remember reading a lot of V.C. Andrews books. I believe her first book I read, and I was in the 3rd grade, was Garden of Shadows Guarding of Shadows, which is a part of her Dollenganger series about the Foxworths. That was the first book I read about her, but I remember reading quite a few of her books in elementary school, right? And also in 3rd grade was when I discovered Harry Potter. And so 3rd through 5th, I read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. And I read those 4 books. Well, the first 2 books was when one of my neighbors across the street gave me the first 2 books to read. It was a lady. Her name was Miss Susie. She gave me the first 2 books to read when she started I Like to Read. So she gave me the first 2 books to read, and they were so good, but I didn't know what I was reading initially, because I read them backwards. I didn't realize it was a series. I read them backwards. So I read the Chamber of Secrets first, and then I read the Sorcerer's Stone. But yeah. And those books, I remember the Harry Potter books used to be like worth 40 accelerated reader points. So I read those books. I love Harry Potter, the Harry Potter books. Next is Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters. Now, I don't remember what year I read this book. I feel like I read this book in like the 90s, you know, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade versus, you know, the 2000s and 4th and 5th. But I feel like I read that book in the 90s. I feel like I read it in 2nd grade when I was, when we were staying in Quincy, Florida, and I was at Stewart Street Elementary. So basically, Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters is about this man who has 2 daughters, and I believe a prince came, and the girls wanted the daughter who was like the little lazier, vain one wanted to marry him, but he ended up marrying the daughter who was hard-working and not vain, but she was still very beautiful. I believe that's what happened in that book. Also, I remember reading the Anansi the Spider stories. I don't remember any particular Anansi the Spider story, but I do remember reading a lot of stories featuring about Anansi the Spider. Also the book Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cries. I have that book here, but I can't really remember to the T exactly what it was about. I read it in 2nd grade, I believe. But I remember it was by a lady, I believe Mildred Taylor wrote the book. And I believe the family was experiencing Jim Crow prejudice or something like that. It was a good book. I remember it being a good book. Also, The Watsons Go to Birmingham. That was my book. I read that book so many times. It was about a family. I read the book in 2nd grade and again in 5th grade. Yeah, and again in 5th grade. And it was about this, it was told from the point of view of the son, I believe. And they were living up north, and the family decided to go to Birmingham one summer. And while they was down there, you know, they experienced a lot of prejudices and racism in the town. And also the little girl, the bombing of the 4 little girls happened in that book. But it was a really fun book. I remember the family, the mom told the oldest son once to go to the store to buy something, to get something on credit. And the little boy didn't know what it was. And he started going up there to like just buying stuff, saying that his mom told him he could get it and put it on credit. It was too funny. It was a really good book. And the last book was The Color Purple. Now, I read this book in 2nd grade, but I didn't really know what I was reading when I read the book. Actually, I read the book in 1st grade, but I didn't know what I was reading. I was just, you know, reading the book. And she wrote it with, you know, Southern vernacular, so it wasn't like a book with a lot of huge words that I didn't know how to pronounce or know what they meant. But it was about this young girl named Celie who's molested and raped by her father, or molested and beaten by her father, and then sold off at 14 to a neighbor who wants to marry her, and about her journey to becoming a woman, you know, into becoming a woman and coming into her own. It's a really good story, which I'm going to do a separate video on that book, but The Color Purple was by Alice Walker. So yeah, those are all my reads from elementary school. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.